Hey folks, welcome to week 7 of DMD400 audio and video for the web. Okay, it's another After Effects week, so while you are off working on your podcast, it's time to dive back in to some practice and new things with Adobe After Effects. So let's take a look at the week 7 overview. All right, a couple of things to accomplish this week. First of all, in terms of your practice section of Adobe After Effects under consumables, you have these 5 videos here to practice with. This is covering a few different areas in After Effects, using masks, using shape layers, and using text. Now, the creation of text in After Effects is really very similar to how you would create text elements in both Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. And so if you're familiar with that, the mere creation and editing of typography should be pretty second nature. However, the using of text in terms of animation and adding motion to it, that's obviously a new wrinkle. And so we've got a few different things here as far as that goes. If you look at the bottom 2 videos here, the text in After Effects goes over the creation of typography. That should be pretty straightforward. But then adding some animation to that is the next video right after that. Now, of course, before that, we have how to use some masking effects in After Effects, which are kind of similar to the masking effects in the Layers palette in Photoshop. So you might find that a little bit familiar. Using shape layers, which is broken down into a 2-part video here, part 1 and part 2. And remember, these are all linear connected videos, which by now I'm sure you're familiar with. So you can start with the first video and then just follow along all the way through this mark here to 21:22. Once you get to that point, you're done with this week's training videos. Make sure you set aside enough time this week to practice with these. I always remind you of this every time we come to an After Effects week, but it is really important so that you can really get better at the software. And of course, then once you have learned these new skills, you can then employ them on upcoming projects, which is the next thing we're doing this week. Is we're going to introduce our 3rd project, which, by the way, is our final project. So you've already completed project 1, which was your creating a lower third in After Effects. You are this week finishing up project 2, which is due at the end of this week. End of the week is the making a lyric video. That the final on that is due at the end of this week. You've already been introduced to project 4, which is your almost semester-long podcast project, which you have started working on by now. And then this is it. This is the final project for the semester, project 3. So you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, we're only in week 7 and that's the end of the projects. Well, remember, the podcast project has multiple deliverables and that runs through the remainder of the semester. And this project we're going to introduce today, project 3, also runs through the remainder of the semester. It has multiple deliverables as well. So you're going to be spending, after the end of this week, you're going to be spending all your time toggling between project 3, which is an After Effects project, and project 4, which is your team-based podcast project. So you'll be able to keep your attention focused on those throughout, as well as practicing some new skills in After Effects as we go. Okay, so before we introduce project 3, one final reminder that at the end of this week you're making a lyric video is due, project 2. So be sure to review the specifications for that. Make sure that you have taken into account the feedback that you got on the draft that you submitted, and of course improve it, make it better, and get it ready for the end of the week, all right? All right, so let's take a look at project 3. Now, if you have had me in previous classes, project 3 is going to look very familiar to you. So this is, for all intents and purposes, the exact same project that was the semester-long project for DMD400, Intro to Digital Media Design. Now, if you took that class with me, you're like, wait a minute, this project looks exactly the same, because it is exactly the same. This is what I like to call a bookend project. So DMD400, of course, is an introductory course. It's a 100-level course. It's designed for freshmen, people from all different majors. And so the point of this project in that area, in that particular class, is to introduce people to some basic concepts of sort of genre deconstruction and reconstruction through a variety of deliverable steps. And in the end, you're making a version of a title sequence. Now, it's not meant to be super complex or very advanced because, again, it's a 100-level class. But here, in our 400-level class, we are going to take the exact same project with a few variations. I've updated a little bit here and there. And now that you have many more visual design skills that you have gained in your variety of classes, as well as now your newly obtained After Effects skills, you're going to make a much more advanced title sequence. All right, so let's go through this project sort of step by step. I'll point out the stuff that is the same as before, also go over some of the generalities of it, and then sort of talk about what your options are in terms of choosing how to do this project, okay? All right, let's tackle that. Okay, so like I said, you might see this project and find it to be a little bit familiar. We are making a title sequence, and we are deconstructing and reconstructing a genre. Now, this is sort of a trope that I like to use in a couple of classes, because it's not just a matter of making the title sequence. You know, so far our first two After Effects assignments have been pretty straightforward. You come up with a basic concept, you execute basic concept, you finalize basic concept, and you move on. So now that we've had some time to sort of learn and practice with After Effects and introduce the idea of motion to our visual design skills, now let's try to put something together that's going to tell a little bit longer narrative. It's going to have a little bit more of a story underneath of it, and it requires a little more research and planning and brainstorming. So this is more of a full-fledged design project. So again, we're using the same premise as for we did in DMD400. Now, if you didn't take me for DMD400, this will be all new to you. But either way, it's written in such a way that it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so the first thing is there is a read first section, which is kind of like some textbook reading, which is actually reimagined from this article by Stephen Goldstein, which is Message Design Course Project. It's more of an overview. So it talks about the difference between genre, subgenre, and themes. Now, of course, you may have learned about genres, subgenres, and themes in other classes, maybe one of my classes, maybe in a literature class, maybe in some other class you took, so this should not be entirely unfamiliar to you. But it's important to be familiar with what these are, because we are going to be using them to reimagine a classic movie or television show and then build a title sequence for it. Okay, so once you get the reading section under your belt, it's only one page, we're going to dive into step one, which is to choose from a classic movie or television show and reimagine it. So remakes, of course, are nothing new in Hollywood. There are dozens of them dating back as far as the 1930s. As of right now, there are over 121 remakes happening at the moment. Probably more, because they seem to be announcing new ones every day. There's always new ones coming out on television, movies, remakes, reimaginings, sequels, prequels, you name it, they're all over the place. So we're going to take one of these classic television shows or movies, and we are going to reimagine it into a different genre and subgenre. So you have to choose one of these. There are 4 TV shows to pick from. The Fugitive, which ran from 63 to 67, Adam 12, ran from 68 to 75, Bewitched, which ran from 64 to 72, and MASH, which ran from 72 to 83. And you can see here to the right is the genre slash subgenre that was associated with the original. Now, the link to the right of each one is a link to the story synopsis, which is sort of a long form written out explanation of what the show was about or the movie was about. So you can read through that, get to know them for sure. Now, the movies, of course, there's 4 movies to pick from. Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977, Gloria from 1980, When Harry Met Sally from 1989, and The Birdcage from 1996. Same deal. The genre is to the right, and of course the link to the synopsis is over on the right even further. Now, ideally, you should watch these as opposed to just read the synopsis. It would help you along with the project a lot better if you understood the original. So if you can find them on some streaming service, which I'm sure you can, these things are all available somewhere, then it would be great to watch them. Now, of course, the movie, you can watch the whole movie. The TV show, I'm not expecting you to watch all of the seasons of the various TV shows. But, you know, a couple of episodes of the one you find most interesting. Now, if you did this assignment with me in DMD400, you have a choice here. You can either pick the same TV show or movie that you used for that class, and now this is your second chance to come around and do it again and do a better, more professional job of it because you have more experience, or you can pick a completely different one. It's entirely up to you. I'm not going to hold you to it one way or the other. Now, if you've never seen this assignment before and you didn't have me for DMD400, obviously these are all new choices. Now, if you need to have a better understanding of all of the genres that are available for film or subgenres, there's 2 links here. This is a comprehensive list of all the genres, comprehensive list of all the subgenres. Now, the main thing you're going to do here is pick a TV show or movie And then you are going to turn it into a remake, but using a different genre. So a romantic comedy could become a horror movie. A fantasy comedy could become a thriller. A crime drama could become a romantic comedy, and so on and so on and so on. So it could be it would be helpful for you to become familiar with what your choices of genres are before you do the swapping, and just sort of try to be creative and imagine how would these work with a different genre attached to them. Now, these were all purposely chosen because not only are they classics, but they all have titles that can be imagined in different directions. None of them are so specific that it would be impossible to reimagine it as a different type of movie or TV show. So they work out pretty well because the titles are fairly ambiguous. Okay, so step one, of course, is you are going to write a one-page plot summary of your newly imagined TV show or movie in its new genre. So now there is a difference between a synopsis and a plot summary. The thing you're going to read here with these links are synopsis. They're long, they're detailed. The plot summary is just an overview. It's one page. It's just a quick overview. So if you're not sure what a plot summary is, look it up and you'll be able to see the difference. Okay, they're short, it's an overview, but it is written creatively. So certainly get your creative chops on when you are going to write this. Refer to the class writing guidelines, of course, before you do so. So that's step one, and that's going to be your homework starting at the end of this week, is to get rolling on step one. Now, the rest of the project goes on from there, and you can check out all the deadlines in Canvas so you can see when these various steps are due. But step two is to create a research collection and presentation, which is basically your research and brainstorming section of the project. So you can read through that. We are, of course, learning a little bit more about classic title sequences as we go along. You might be familiar with some of these, and the links here, a collection of movie title sequences and TV show opening sequences and top 10 TV show sequences. Gives you a whole bunch to choose from, so you can go in and dig around and really kind of do some research as to what these things look like. There's also a great video and article about how to make your own title sequence and the theory behind them. So this is all more textbook reading and consumption, as it were. A little bit about closing credits, which we're not doing, but I just wanted to differentiate between the two. And then this sort of goes into how you are going to complete step two, but we'll get into this more as step two continues from there. Okay. Then, of course, step three is to actually build the title sequence itself. Now, this is where the assignment gets different from the version from DMD400, because here you're going to make, first of all, we're going to be creating storyboards. Remember, way back at the beginning of the semester, we had a handout all about storyboards and the basics of animation. Well, this is where that comes into play, because you are going to create your own storyboard in planning and designing your own title sequence. Then, of course, you're going to go on from there and build the actual title sequence in Adobe After Effects. And, of course, you can use Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and any other audio and video editing software that you would like, such as Adobe Premiere, Apple iMovie, GarageBand, etc., to really flesh it out. Now, this is where the project really sort of moves into high gear, because now that we have all these motion graphics skills, you're going to be able to really make a very professional looking title sequence here. So this is going to eat up the majority of the time. Okay, so that's the overview of the assignment. Again, you might be familiar with it, you might not be familiar with it, it doesn't really matter, but I want you to start really sort of planning it, starting way back with step one, which is the homework for this week. Okay, so other than that, remember, lots of time this week to practice with After Effects. These videos here, talking about masks, shape layers, and text. Be sure to turn in your final Project 2. Once all the final versions of Project 2 are turned in at the end of the week, the peer reviews will then turn on, and you will be assigned a classmate to go review their final for Project 2, so keep an eye open for that as well. All right, other than that, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or whatever, be sure to contact me either by email or poke into the weekly Zoom office hours, and I will see you soon.